When the first video game was made, graphics were not a large focus. It was a miracle they were even working in the first place. Main objective was to get all that code on that chunky ass computer and pray that it runs. Video games were made on assembly language at the time, which, if you know nothing about code, it's a nightmare. It sucks. Coding languages like C did exist, but the game cartridges at the time, these bad boys, the first video game I ever played, by the way, didn't fit all that space. They didn't have enough space for coding languages. So they had to build games from the ground up. Eventually, the technology became advanced and affordable enough to fit coding languages in the new game cartridges. So you started to get games that were ported from console to PC, all this different stuff. And that is what started the push for realistic graphics in games. Now that everyone was working with the same language, lines of code and assets were reused. So now, this is when it gets interesting. Rapid game development. Oh yeah, games are 3D now. Also, they're first person. And the boobs are triangles, by the way. At the time, this was revolutionary. There's still some small details they got wrong. If you look really closely at this footage, crazy close, you'll notice that Tony Montana's head is not attached to his body. Even though the graphics weren't 100% photorealistic, they didn't need to be. Instead, we got completely stylized games that artistically are just very fun to look at. There were games that try to go for realism that at the time were revolutionary, but now are just boring. If a game went full on with the realism, they, in my opinion, bland. There were some games that had a mix of realism and stylized art, like the God of War series, and those aged incredibly. The reality is, games that weren't going for realism just aged better. Yeah, maybe I can see all the triangles on Kratos' muscles and Mario's mustache and Lara Croft's chest, but I still enjoy playing these games to this day. The music, super fun gameplay, and awesome level design keeps these games fun and makes them stand the test of time. Even with the limits of graphics, beautiful and fun games were still being made. If you think about it, thanks to the lacking technology, we have games that really all they have to rely on are the gameplay. Until game studios made a monster. This is the part of the video where I complain about video games for like 2 minutes. And I'm red now because I'm angry. The advancement of game engines like Unreal Engine 5 and Rage is a bittersweet story. While games like Red Dead Redemption 2 and The Last of Us 2 are both technological masterpieces of cinematic games, other game studios have taken this technology, put all their resources in hyper-realistic graphics, and made boring, uninspired games. They really don't make them like they did before. For example, while the new Assassin's Creed games look great, I'd much rather play Donkey Kong Country. So yeah, anyways, remember when I mentioned all the old games that were older, but at the time looked super real, now kind of suck? Yeah, well, they kind of maybe remade all of them. A lot of these remakes are great reboots of the franchise, like God of War 2018. Others are great remakes of games like The Last of Us. Reboots like God of War 2018 and Ragnarok are great additions to the franchise that add insane layers to characters like Kratos as a man and a father, while giving us this badass story within the lore of Norse mythology. Remakes like The Last of Us bring better graphics and revitalize game functions to this already great and cinematic game. This obsession with graphics causes remakes to be made that really did not need to be made. Now that the technology to make realistic games is in the hands of everyone, it just doesn't feel as special anymore. Watching the most recent PlayStation showcase felt like I was just shown the same 5 different types of games that I've been shown for the past 5 years now. Games now just feel mind-numbingly generic. I can't help but to think, why couldn't this just be made a movie? With the success of The Last of Us show, I think it's become very apparent that the stories told in video games can be told in a movie or TV show with the right direction. So why not just do that? I love The Last of Us as much as the next guy, but the reason I love it so much is the story. Some of the best acting performances are in this game, and all the cutscenes are recorded in live action, then animated over. So why not cut out the middleman and just shoot it live action? Think about it. If you take out the mocap suits from these scenes and give them actual outfits, you've got a great set of actors for a show. As games like The Last of Us and Red Dead Redemption 2 push the boundaries between a video game and a cinematic experience, we should ask ourselves, why do we even bother? I'll tell you why. Every single person has always wanted to be the main character in a movie, and when a video game does that well, it's hard to forget about it. So we have those few games that use graphics to their advantage, but so many video games are hindered by this push for realism. Why should it matter if my horse's balls shrink in the cold? This is a real mechanic in Red Dead Redemption 2, by the way. I just want to shoot bad guys. All these extra details in a game are interesting to hear about, but are they necessary? And how necessary are the graphics anyways? The game is so good, shouldn't it be able to hold up on the gameplay alone? So, let's see how important graphics really are in video games by playing Red Dead Redemption 2 on high and low graphics. Hey, this game looks great. Hey, this looks like shit. I mean, it's playable though.
Well, let me have a rule and a saw and a board and I'll cut it. I'll climb up a ladder with a hammer and a nail and I'll nail it. Well, we worked so hard to
That was pretty
build a
cool.
little house together. In the snow or the rain or the ice cold wind, whenever. No matter.
Man, screw that game. I want to play Animal Jam. Wow, hell yeah. Now this is a game. Spin that shit. We won big! As you can see, even though I wouldn't want to play this again, the difference isn't huge, and I can still find enjoyment in the game. Kind of makes you wish that there were more studios out there making games that didn't rely as much on graphics and just made fun, nice to look at, cool games to play. Like Sea of Thieves, for example, isn't like 100% like real life, but it's fun to play. It has an interesting style. It's very stylized, and it's just a fun experience. If game studios spent as much time on the gameplay as they do with the graphics of the game, we'd have more games like Doom Eternal with amazing, flawless combat and movement systems. We wouldn't have, games coming out in half-baked states, barely working with bugs on bugs on bugs on bugs. To wrap it all up, what I'm trying to express is my frustration with this obsession with graphics. We've gone so lost in the sauce that we've all forgotten the true essence of what makes a good video game. If you ask someone their favorite video game, it's usually an older game, and since these older games had not the best graphics, you're sure to know that the gameplay is awesome. And with the rise in popularity of indie games and the fall of bland and rushed AAA games, the future of gaming seems to be headed down a good path. Thank you for watching. Long live the Queen.
And the graphics, that's really what this is all about. And